Hi, I'm Cameron with the Bike Rack. You've bought a new road bike and now we're going to show you how to use it. So the very first thing I always like to mention is that the brakes work really well. So most of everything that's out there right now is hydraulic disc brakes, which means that goes even double. So how you want to use your brakes is always to use right hand or both hands to stop the bike. The front hand is your left hand. So if you lock this one all by itself, it can actually cause at high speeds you to flip over the bike can move with you in that way, or it could just help make you lose control. So you don't want to do that. It's much easier to predict if you just go right hand or both hands together, a nice easy squeeze. Disc brakes they modulate really well, so it's very predictable, but it stops all the time really great. Your shifters, these are a little bit different than some other options that are out on the market, but pretty much everything Shimano makes works this way. So this happens to be Shimano 105, but whether you're on the entry level with Claris or even up on Dura-Ace, this is pretty much exactly how they work. Always be pedaling when you want to shift. It just makes the system work better. Now the left hand makes your large adjustments to how hard it is to pedal. The right hand makes your fine adjustments. Most of everything in the back is 11 speed now, but there are 8, 9, and 10 speeds underneath it. But the front hand, with almost everything you're gonna see nowadays, they always have 2 gears up front, and the front shifter has 4 shift positions, even though there's only 2 gears. So how you shift the bike is either your entire brake lever functions as the brake lever, but it's also your shifter. So you take this, and if you want to shift up into the next chainring, go all the way through the lever motion. And to release, take this blade that's right behind it, once again, all the way through the lever motion. With this lever, there are 2 gears, but there are 4 shift positions. So if we're in the lowest position right now in the smaller gear, you can move this through and it'll make a very light click. And that's to make it so that the front derailleur has a little bit more space for what's going on in the back cassette. Same thing at the top. If you're up the top and you are climbing up the cassette, you start hearing some noise. That's what the trim is for. So you go just until it makes a soft click, very light, and then it'll drop on the next part of the click. The right side or your rear is exactly the same function, but every single time it clicks is a gear. So blade drops it down. Harder gears or faster gears. The blade, or the entire brake lever, goes up. The entire brake lever goes up. And the blade is your release. Now with this, you want to try to avoid a couple things. You want to try to avoid shifting under really heavy load, meaning shift when you see a hill, not when you're halfway up the hill. If you're climbing on a hill and you're pushing really hard on the pedals and you're trying to make a big shift up front, one of the 2 things is most likely to happen. 1, it's going to make angry grinding sounds and not shift, or 2, it's going to probably overshift and you're going to have to stop and put your chain back on the chain rings. Depending on the frame, they have a feature on the bike that makes it so that's a lot harder for the chain to drop, but it's not impossible no matter what system you're on. So always just shift early. That's the smartest thing to do. Your rear set of gears will shift under load, but the front system just doesn't like it. It's a very simple system up front. A couple things you want to avoid in terms of gear combinations. You want to avoid opposite extremes. So you do not want to be in your hardest gear on your left hand and your easiest gear in the back. You'll notice that it's very loud right away. When your trim adjustment is for adjusting some of that out, but if you're in the opposite all the way extreme, some people call it crossover gear, you just don't want to be here. It's wear and tear on the system. The noise is caused by friction. There's a lot of wear on your pulleys and springs, so it just doesn't like to be here. But if you like the way this works, there's a fair amount of overlap space between the front gears and the rear gears in range. So if you drop yourself down to the small gear and somewhere more in the middle of the cassette, it's virtually the same thing. Same is true on the other side of that spectrum, where you've got yourself in the smaller gear up front and the smallest gear in the back, easiest, hardest. In this case, once again, you're going to find some noise because there's just not enough room for the chain to reach from here over to here. Your chain is also very slack in this position, so it tends to like to bounce around and potentially even scratch up your nice pretty new frame, or it could once again drop off of the chain rings. Very inconvenient, dirty fingers, you just don't want to do it. So if you dig the way that this feels, put yourself up in the bigger gear, and somewhere more in the middle of the cassette, once again, is pretty much the same gear. All Trek frames have a lifetime warranty on them, and there's at least a year on all your individual components. Depending on what level it is, might modify a little bit of that, but that's the simplest way to think about it, always. We take care of all your basic adjustments for free for your first year, so at some point, your gears are gonna get a little bit sluggish, some things might start getting a little noisy or loose. When that happens, just go ahead and bring the bike on in. It's called a new bike check. We take care of pretty much all of that for your first year. Stuff you have to do at home with your bike are first, with road tires, things are generally gonna be a little higher pressure, so you're gonna wanna make sure you definitely air these up at least once a week if you're riding regularly. The tire itself does show somewhere on it what the pressure range wants to be. Usually in raised letters. There it is. Virtually all road bikes come with this style of valve. It's called a Presta valve, and how it operates is there's a nut on the bottom of it that supports against the rim, keeps it nice in place when you're putting your pump on it. Take off this old dust cover, totally an unnecessary part, but some people like to have them. Then up top, the valve has a nut on it that you unthread a little bit, just so air can get in and out of the system. Apply your pump, put in however much air you need in it, and then when you're done, snug that back down and apply this if you want to. If your bike gets real dirty, all you have to do is just hose it down, wipe it off, no problems. But you want to try to avoid spraying water directly into the moving parts at the back. They don't mind being wet, but they do like to have grease on them, so you don't want to wash that away all the time. On this style of bike, generally speaking, we like to recommend a really light synthetic oil-based or a wet type lubricant, because you don't have to do it very often. It does tend to get a little bit dirtier, but frankly, you only have to do it a few times a season at all. If you have to take your wheels off for any reason, these have what are called through axles. So how these work is there's a large axle that goes through the entire system here, and it unthreads itself to take your wheel on and off. With almost all of the road bikes that are coming with discs, this is the system. Now you'll notice that down here, there's a bolt hole. It's actually a 6mm Allen key, so you can either do this with your multi-tool you have in your luggage, or the rear wheel houses right now where the key that comes with the system is. Now this key can move from wheel to wheel. It's a nice snug press fit though, but once again, 6mm Allen. We'll go ahead and put this on the front wheel for now to use it. Snug that right in there, and then it's just a lever. Unthread this puppy all the way. And when she's loose, pull that out, the wheel drops right out. The really nice thing about these, besides the fact that it makes the entire wheel junction a little bit of a stiffer connection, is just makes it so it's impossible to put your wheel in crooked. So your brakes won't rub, which is great. Disc brakes are generally speaking a self-centering system, so this is pretty easy. To put it back on, you're going to go ahead and just lift your wheel up into its dropouts, just where it came from. Make sure you do center it between the disc rotors as well as you can visually, because this is going to do the rest of the work for you. Once you push it in, it just starts spinning the threads, nice and easy like, and just go until it's pretty darn snug. When you can't turn it anymore, it's all done. Now this can actually live on either the front or the rear, but generally speaking, I just leave it on the rear of the bike. Thanks so much for watching the video, and enjoy your ride.